This first
Okay.
one, I would like to call him Nacho Libre. And we were both working in the stock room, and so we would prep the boots, all that stuff. He drove a Bumblebee yellow truck, like Bumblebee yellow. That's what I remember. And so we thought he seemed like a really nice guy, but this guy was not a hard worker at all. This guy would sit down and he would do the work. He kind of moved at a snail's pace. Nacho Libre liked to fall asleep a lot. Like, he would go to his truck on his lunch break and he would fall asleep, which is fine. If you're on your lunch break, we would get an hour lunch break. That's fine. Do what you want to do. But he would also fall asleep in the middle of like prepping the merchandise.
But he used to make almost like a throne chair with the boxes. I don't know how exactly to describe it. He would like kind of put all the boxes in a way to where he'd make himself like a little chair. And so he would be doing this, and I don't know why, but I always remember it being mid shirts. It was always like when he was doing shirts is when he would fall asleep. And it's because shirts, I mean, don't get me wrong, they had a lot of detail that they had to be taken out. Depending on the brand, you had to take off these little plastic clips. There was like these needles that you'd have to take out. And obviously the needles are important because you don't want somebody trying on the merchandise and getting stabbed. Like, that was the biggest thing that you don't want to have happen. So he'd be doing these little plastic clips and whatever, and he'd be awake 1 minute, just like my grandfather. And then another moment, you'd hear him just like snore, and he would have the shirt in his hand. He'd kind of be doing this number, and you'd have to bump him awake. And I remember there was one time that the manager caught him doing that, and he was none too happy, of course, of like, what am I paying you for, and anything like that. And I remember this guy, old Nacho Libre, making the comment, it's like, well, maybe if you paid me more, I wouldn't fall asleep. And I remember it being like, what'd you say? And it was like that My Cousin Vinny moment where he got in trouble with the judge, and he's like, "What? Me? What I say? What I say?" He was acting like he didn't say nothing. And the other thing was, the man was quite gassy. He'd be just letting them rip, and that whole back room would just be stinking and whatnot. And he actually lasted a lot longer than I thought he was going to. We thought he was going to get fired a good ways in, especially with how much he slept and how much he got caught. Thank you so much for watching this short clip of the Doughnut Box Podcast. If you like what you've seen, please come to our page, view the full episode, and see other episodes, as well as subscribe.